J.D. Vance was standing backstage at a high-dollar Republican donor event, glancing down at his phone again and again. For what felt like the 100th time, he refreshed his messages. Then an alert came through from his communications director, marked urgent. Obama is going live in 20 minutes. Something big is coming. Vance felt his stomach knot instantly. Barack Obama didn't make surprise public appearances without a clear purpose. The former president had stayed mostly silent in recent months, avoiding day-to-day political clashes. When Obama chose to speak, it usually meant something carefully planned and impactful was about to unfold. "What do you think it is?" one of Vance's aides asked, noticing the sudden tension in his posture. "I don't know," Vance replied, trying to stay composed. "But whatever it is, we need to be prepared." For the past 2 years, Vance had carefully built his political image around one central idea: merit matters. He had written opinion pieces criticizing diversity programs, appeared on major cable news shows attacking affirmative action, and repeatedly argued that American institutions were being weakened by policies he claimed rewarded identity over ability. His public persona depended on the belief that he had achieved everything through discipline, effort, and raw talent alone. The television in the green room flickered to life. Obama appeared on screen from a fundraiser in Chicago, calm, confident, and smiling as applause filled the room. When he stepped up to the podium, the crowd quieted. "Ladies and gentlemen," Obama began, "tonight I want to talk about honesty in politics, about the gap between the stories some politicians tell and the full truth of their personal journeys." Vance's phone started vibrating nonstop. Messages poured in from staff, donors, and reporters. Something was clearly unfolding. "We've heard a lot lately about merit-based success," Obama continued, "about how some individuals claim they rose purely on their own abilities, without help or special consideration." Vance felt his hands turn cold. "So tonight," Obama said, pausing, "I'm going to share information the American people deserve to see. Information about Senator J.D. Vance's time at Yale Law School." The room in Chicago reacted immediately. Gasps echoed, cameras flashed, and the tension was unmistakable. Backstage, Vance felt the color drain from his face. Obama reached into a folder on the podium as the camera zoomed in. "These documents," Obama explained, "are Senator Vance's academic records from Yale Law School. They were obtained legally through a Freedom of Information request connected to federal scholarship programs. And what they reveal is notable." Vance turned up the volume as his entire team gathered silently around the screen. Senator Vance was admitted to Yale Law School in 2010 under what the admissions office classified as a geographic diversity initiative, Obama read. His application received special consideration because he came from Appalachian, Ohio, a region historically underrepresented in elite law schools. The audience reacted audibly. Obama allowed the moment to linger. His LSAT score was 168, Obama continued. A respectable score, but still below Yale's median of 173 that year. His undergraduate GPA was 3.5 from Ohio State University. Again, solid, but below the typical standard for admission. Admissions notes state that his compelling personal story and geographic background made him a strong candidate despite academic numbers below the usual threshold. Vance felt nauseous. His phone was lighting up with breaking news alerts. The narrative he had spent years crafting was unraveling live on national television. Obama wasn't done. "But what's even more revealing," he said, "is Senator Vance's performance once he arrived at Yale." He adjusted his glasses and continued reading. He graduated with a GPA equivalent to roughly a B- average, ranking 126th out of 213 students in his class. The Chicago crowd was now completely silent. Attendance records show that Senator Vance missed 43% of his first-year classes. He was placed on academic probation for 1 semester and received a D in constitutional law, requiring him to retake the course. A quiet curse escaped from someone on Vance's team. This was far worse than they had anticipated. "Let me be clear," Obama said, his tone shifting. "There is nothing shameful about struggling academically. Geographic diversity is a valid admissions consideration. What is troubling is spending years attacking the very systems that helped you succeed. What is wrong is building a political career by labeling others unqualified while benefiting from special consideration yourself. The applause in Chicago was deafening. Obama smiled and allowed the moment to settle before stepping back. Vance's campaign manager rushed into the green room. "We need a response immediately. Every major network is calling. Social media is exploding. You're scheduled to go on stage in 15 minutes. Vance felt overwhelmed. His thoughts raced through every speech, every interview. Every time he had dismissed affirmative action and claimed his rise was purely merit-based. "Get me the documents," Vance said finally. "I need to see exactly what they have." "They're already public," his aide replied. Obama's team uploaded everything to an open database. Transcripts, admissions notes, attendance records, everything was there. Vance scrolled through the files on his phone, his thumb moving slowly as the reality sank in. The documents spelled it out clearly. Admissions committee notes, geographic diversity admit. Special consideration granted due to Appalachian background and compelling personal story of overcoming poverty. It was all written in plain language, impossible to deny. For years, Vance had told crowds that he got into Yale purely on merit. He had repeated again and again that no doors were open for him, that he never benefited from special treatment, and that his story proved anyone could succeed if they worked hard enough. Now he could see it for himself. At best, those claims were incomplete. At worst, they were simply untrue. "What do we say?" his press secretary asked quietly. "The donors are getting nervous. Some are already asking if they can pull their contributions." Vance looked around the room. Every member of his team was staring at him, waiting for direction. He opened his mouth. "Tell them," he began, then stopped. The words wouldn't come. There was no clean explanation. His chief strategist stepped in. "We reframe it," he said. "Geographic diversity isn't the same thing as racial affirmative action. That's the angle. We say you still earned your place because you came from a disadvantaged area? But that contradicts everything I've said," Vance shot back. "I've argued nonstop that any consideration beyond test scores and grades is wrong." "Then you were wrong," the strategist replied flatly. "And now you have to decide whether you admit that or try to sell an argument no one will believe." 20 minutes later, Vance walked onto the stage. The applause was there, but it was restrained, polite, and noticeably colder than usual. Everyone in the room had already seen Obama's remarks. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Vance began. His voice lacked its usual confidence. "I know many of you have questions about the information that was released earlier, and I want to address it directly." He paused, realizing his prepared speech no longer mattered. "Yes. I was admitted to Yale Law School through a geographic diversity program," he said. "But I want to be clear about what that means. This was not racial affirmative action. It was about representing an underrepresented region of our country." Someone in the audience shouted, "But you said all diversity programs were wrong." Vance felt sweat gather at his hairline. "I said programs based solely on race were problematic," he replied. "Geographic diversity is different because it helped you," another voice interrupted. The contrast was devastating. Video clips flooded the internet, pairing Vance's past statements with Obama's revelations. Admissions should be based purely on merit test scores and grades. Nothing else. Vance had said on Fox News just 3 months earlier, cut to Obama, he was admitted with below-median scores through a diversity program. "If you can't cut it in class, you don't belong at elite institutions." Vance had written in a Wall Street Journal op-ed, cut to Obama. He missed 43% of his first-year classes and was placed on academic probation. "We can't have different standards for different people." Vance had repeated in speech after speech, cut to Obama. Special consideration granted due to geographic background and personal narrative. The internet showed no mercy. Memes spread across social media. Short clips went viral within minutes. Political opponents jumped in eagerly. Senator Marcus Reed tweeted, Funny how merit only matters when someone else gets the opportunity. Democratic strategist Jennifer Walsh posted, "This is what happens when you build an entire career on hypocrisy. Eventually, the truth always comes out." That phrase was spreading fast online, shared by critics and former supporters alike. Even conservative voices were starting to step back. "Vance has some explaining to do," wrote well-known right-wing blogger Dan Mitchell. "You can't spend years attacking these programs and then find out you personally benefited from them." Vance sat alone in his hotel room, endlessly scrolling through his phone. The damage was impossible to ignore. His approval ratings were dropping by the hour. Polls that once showed him comfortably ahead of his likely Democratic opponent now had him falling behind. Major donors were withdrawing support. Speaking engagements were being quietly canceled. His wife, Amy, sat beside him, reading the same headlines. "What are you going to do?" she asked softly. "I don't know," Vance admitted. "Every response I make just seems to make things worse." Despite strong warnings from senior advisors, Vance chose to fight back. He booked an interview with a friendly conservative TV host for the next morning. "I'm not going to let Barack Obama and the liberal media destroy me over this," he told his team. "We're pushing back." His campaign manager looked worn down. "Fight back with what? The facts aren't helping you here." "The facts show I've been consistent in my principles," Vance argued. Geographic diversity isn't the same as racial preferences. That distinction matters. His communications director pulled up transcripts on her laptop. "Have you read your own speeches?" she asked. "You literally said, 'Any admission decision based on anything other than pure academic merit is a corruption of our educational system.' You said anything other than pure academic merit. How do you explain that?" Vance waved it away. "Context matters. Once people hear the full explanation, they'll understand." They didn't. The interview went off the rails almost immediately. "Senator Vance, thank you for joining us," the host began. "Let's address the elephant in the room. You were admitted to Yale through a diversity program after building your career attacking diversity programs. How do you explain that?" "Well, first of all, geographic diversity is fundamentally different." "But Senator," the host interrupted, "you've argued against all diversity considerations in admissions." "I have the quotes right here." "My comments were about racial preferences," Vance said. "That's not what you said," the host replied. "You said any consideration beyond test scores and grades was wrong." "Those are your words." Vance felt cornered. "I was speaking broadly about principles that apparently didn't apply to you," the host said bluntly. The interview spiraled from there. Every answer led to a tougher follow-up. Every attempt to clarify exposed another contradiction. By the end, even the friendly host looked uncomfortable. "Senator, I appreciate you coming on," he said carefully, "but I think our viewers deserved clearer answers than what you've provided today." It was a polite way of saying the interview failed. Back in Washington, Vance's Senate office was in chaos. Staffers were overwhelmed with angry calls from constituents. Ohio newspapers demanded explanations. Fellow Republicans began distancing themselves. Senate Majority Leader Thompson released a short statement. "Senator Vance needs to address these revelations directly and honestly with the American people." The message was clear. He was on his own. Vance called an emergency meeting with his closest advisors. The atmosphere was bleak. "Our internal polling is disastrous," his campaign manager said. "You're down 18 points in the re-election race. Favorability has dropped 32 points in just 48 hours. Even Republicans are split 60-40 on whether you should remain in office. What do the focus groups say?" Vance asked quietly. "They say you're a hypocrite. They feel betrayed. They say if you believed in these programs, you should have been honest about your own experience. And if you didn't believe in them, you shouldn't have benefited from them." Vance buried his face in his hands. "So what do I do?" "You have 3 options," his chief strategist said. 1. Issue a full apology. Admit you were wrong, acknowledge the hypocrisy, and ask for forgiveness. 2. Resign from the Senate and leave politics. 3. Try to wait it out and hope something else replaces this story. What are the chances option 3 works? Vance asked. About 5%. This isn't going away. Obama made sure of that. Vance looked around the room. These were the people who believed in him, defended him, and built his career. Now they were watching it collapse. Why did Obama do this? Vance asked. Why now? His press secretary checked her phone. He was asked that exact question this morning, she said. His answer was simple. She read it aloud. I believe in forgiveness for past mistakes. What I don't believe in is ongoing hypocrisy that harms others. Senator Vance didn't just benefit from a system he later criticized. He built an entire political identity around, blocking others from accessing the very kind of opportunity that helped launch his own success. That wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate choice. And once it was exposed, there was no way to soften its impact. 3 days after Obama's disclosure shook the political world, Vance stepped in front of reporters for a press conference. There were no friendly hosts this time, no curated audience, no safety net. Just a podium, a packed press corps, and live cameras broadcasting nationwide. Thank you all for being here, Vance began, his voice noticeably subdued. Over the past several days, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on my actions, my statements, and the clear contradiction between what I've said publicly and how I actually benefited from the system. Camera shutters clicked rapidly. Every major network carried the moment live. I was admitted to Yale Law School in 2010, Vance continued. That admission was granted in part through a geographic diversity program that took my background into account. My test scores were strong, but not exceptional. My grades were solid, but not elite. The admissions committee saw value in my personal story, in where I came from, and in what that background represented. He paused, taking a breath. For the past 3 years, I have argued against programs like the one that helped me. I repeatedly said admissions should be based purely on numerical metrics. I criticized special consideration in all forms without acknowledging my own experience. Several reporters tried to jump in with questions, but Vance raised his hand. Please let me finish, he said. I understand why this looks like hypocrisy. I understand why people feel misled and disappointed. And the truth is hard to say, but it's necessary. It is hypocrisy. I benefited from a system and then spent years attacking others who benefited from similar systems. For that, I owe the public an apology. The room fell completely silent. This wasn't the defiant response many had expected, but I also need to be honest about something else, Vance added. Even as I acknowledge that hypocrisy, I still believe it's fair to ask difficult questions about admissions policies, about how they work, whether they achieve their goals, and what unintended consequences may exist. The difference now is that I understand these issues are far more complex than I once admitted. My own story proves that. The reaction was mixed. Some praised the statement as overdue honesty. Others dismissed it as too late to matter. The political damage was already done. His approval ratings stopped falling but never rebounded. He remained underwater with voters. Big donors stayed away. Party leadership kept its distance. Obama never responded directly to the apology. He didn't have to. The point had already been made. 2 weeks later, Vance sat alone in his Senate office, staring at the Ohio state flag hanging on the wall. His phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Senator Vance speaking. Senator, this is Michael Chung from the Yale Law School admissions office. Vance felt his stomach drop. I'm calling because we've reviewed our records in light of recent events, Chung said. We want you to know that while you were admitted through a diversity-based consideration, that does not diminish what you achieved. Geographic diversity matters. Your background mattered. We stand by that decision. Thank you, Vance replied quietly. Though I'm not sure I've earned that confidence. That judgment isn't ours to make, Chung said. But I will share this: around 40% of our students each year are admitted through some form of special consideration. That includes legacy admissions, athletes, geographic diversity, and socioeconomic factors. The idea that most students are admitted purely on numbers is a myth. That's a conversation worth having honestly. When the call ended, Vance sat in silence. Chun was right. The system was far more complicated than the simplified narrative Vance had promoted for years. But accepting that truth meant acknowledging that his political brand was built on an oversimplification, one that couldn't survive scrutiny. 3 months later, Vance announced he would not seek re-election. His statement was short and measured. I came to Washington to fight for Ohio and for principles I believed in. Recent events have made me realize I need to reflect seriously on what those principles truly are, and whether I've lived up to them. I believe I can do more good by stepping back than by continuing to serve under these circumstances. Political analysts called it the right move. Colleagues expressed support, some sincere, some strategic. At a book event in New York, Obama was asked about the decision. I hope Senator Vance uses this time productively, he said. Not everyone who makes mistakes needs to be destroyed, but everyone needs to learn from them. Vance watched the clip later from his home in Cincinnati. His wife sat beside him while their children played in the next room. Do you think you'll ever return to politics? Amy asked. I don't know, Vance said after a moment. Maybe, but if I do, it'll be different. I can't be the guy with all the easy answers anymore. The world just isn't that simple. So, what will you do now? The question stayed with Vance long after the room fell quiet. What do you do when the identity you spent years building suddenly collapses? When you realize that everything you stood for was layered with contradictions you refused to see? I think I'm going to write, Vance said at last. Really write this time. Not another polished memoir, not a safe version of my story. I mean something honest about the programs that helped me, about why I pretended they didn't exist for so long, about what merit actually means, how we talk about success in America, and why those conversations are so often dishonest. Do you think anyone will read it? Someone asked. Maybe not, Vance replied. But I think I need to write it for myself more than for anyone else. In the months that followed, the Vance controversy sparked a much broader national debate. Universities began facing pressure to be more transparent about how admissions decisions were really made. Politicians became more cautious about claiming they had succeeded purely on merit alone, a Washington Post. Investigation revealed that 47 sitting members of Congress had benefited from some form of special consideration during their education or career advancement. Legacy admissions, family connections, athletic recruitment, geographic and socioeconomic factors. The idea of a pure meritocracy started to crack under scrutiny. Obama later addressed the issue in a speech at Harvard. The Vance situation taught us something important, he said. Not that diversity programs are flawless, they aren't, and not that merit doesn't matter. It absolutely does. What it showed is that our national conversation about opportunity has been built on half-truths. We celebrate success as if it comes from talent alone, ignore the help people received, and then use those stories to justify denying help to others. That has to change. He continued, calling for honesty about how success really works in America, about the mix of ability, effort, opportunity, and yes, luck that shapes every life, about the difference between earned advantage and inherited privilege, and about building systems that expand opportunity without pretending those systems are simple or painless. The speech was widely praised across political lines. Even critics who disagreed with Obama's policy views acknowledged that he had identified a real and uncomfortable truth. 1 year after the Yale records revelation, Vance released his new book. It was titled The Merit Myth: What I Got Wrong About Success in America. The book was brutally candid. Vance laid out every contradiction, every moment of hypocrisy, every instance where he benefited from systems he later condemned. He wrote openly about his admission to Yale, his academic struggles there, and how he spent years constructing a false story about his own rise. I told America I was a self-made man. One passage read, "But there is no such thing. I was shaped by my grandparents who raised me, the public schools that educated me, the Marines who trained me, the geographic diversity program that opened the door to Yale, professors who saw potential when my grades didn't show it, and mentors who helped me move forward." My success came from a complex web of support, opportunity, and effort. To deny that wasn't just dishonest, it was a betrayal of everyone who helped me. The book became an unexpected bestseller. Not because people wanted to celebrate Vance, but because it gave voice to something many Americans felt but struggled to articulate. Obama reviewed the book for The Atlantic. "Vance's book matters," he wrote. "Not because telling the truth deserves applause, that should be the bare minimum, but because it shows what real accountability looks like in public life. We need more of that, not less." Vance read the review several times. It was fair, restrained, and still critical, which felt appropriate. He never returned to politics. Instead, he became a different kind of public figure. Someone who spoke openly about the complexity of success, opportunity, and merit in American life. Someone who had learned, painfully, that simple narratives often hide uncomfortable truths. Years later, when asked about the Obama moment in an interview, Vance smiled faintly. "It was the worst thing that ever happened to me," he said, "and maybe the best. I was living a lie and building a career around it. Obama forced me to face that. It was humiliating and painful, but necessary. I'm a better person now, even if I wish I'd learned the lesson before hurting so many people." "Do you resent him for it?" the interviewer asked. Vance thought for a long moment. "No," he said. "I resent myself for making it necessary. Obama didn't create the problem. He just held up a mirror. What I saw there was my own responsibility." The Yale Records episode eventually became a case study in political science courses. A lesson in how contradictions catch up with you, how personal narratives matter, and how hypocrisy, once exposed, is almost impossible to outrun, but it also became something else, a reminder that accountability is possible, that people can change, that admitting even the most damaging mistakes is better than continuing to live a J.D. Vance's political career ended the night Barack Obama revealed his Yale records on live television. But in an unexpected way, his real education, the one he somehow missed while at Yale, finally began.